Welcome to the Hobby School podcast. Whether you're a seasoned hobbyist or just getting started, Hobby School is the perfect place to learn something new. My name is Dr. Destiny Kopp, and I'm your host of the podcast. But before we jump into our episode for today, the only thing I ask is that if you enjoyed the episode, please share with a friend and give us an honest review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps us get out the content to more people. I also want to invite you to get on our wait list for our next Hobby School Online Learning Summit. These are free to attend, and you can find the link to join at hobbyschool.com, which is also in our podcast show notes. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. And my special guest today is Sarah Horgan. Sarah is an intentional living and decluttering coach, and she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in 2014, and she was forced to examine everything. So initially, she tackled her perfectionism and people pleasing, but fast forward to becoming a mom, she was pushed to dig deeper. Struggling in survivor mode with opposite schedules from her husband, keeping it up, it just felt impossible. So she realized that all the stuff, not just physical stuff, was standing in her way of living her life. And Sarah started to get rid of things, and it just clicked. She radically changed her own life. But you don't want to hear it from me. I want you to hear it from Sarah. And today we're going to be talking about building decluttering into your routines. And Sarah, I have a ton of questions for you, but before we get into them, can you tell the audience a little bit more about you and kind of expand upon what I just mentioned there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was really my cancer diagnosis that sort of propelled me into in living more intentionally. But I did really find it to be a process. And I found once I became a mother, it really pushed me even further because as women, we're always trying to keep up with all the things all the time. And I just found it really impossible. So I had read the minimalists, one of their books, Everything That Remains. And I just started getting rid of stuff, and I started to find how much easier it was. And it allowed me to have a lot more time for myself. And then it kind of pushed me towards what I'm doing now, because I had always wanted to write more, and I felt like I had figured this out and that I could help other people. And so I just sort of started with my blog, and that's rolled into my Instagram and my podcast, and now I'm coaching women. So that's sort of where I am now. And it's just allowed me so much more time to have more purpose in my own life and to have things be easier.
So I definitely want to dig into this specifically around the topic of kind of building this into our everyday life, which is, I think, that's your specialty.
Yeah.
And because it can feel daunting, right? When we have, maybe, a lot of us live in these big homes, quite frankly, compared to a lot of people in the world. And we live in these big homes. And over the years, I know, we've been in our home here for 13 years. And over the years, I know I have a ton of stuff here that I'm either not using or I need to kind of get rid of. So
yeah.
And how can we start on that process to really make it feel like it's manageable and not so daunting?
Yeah, because that's the one thing that I feel like, especially if you're already feeling overwhelmed, and a lot of the women that I work with are moms. And so, they're already feeling overwhelmed with dealing with all the things all the time. And so the whole task of decluttering just feels like something extra and something big that they have to deal with. And what I try to teach women is that actually you can just do this a few minutes a day, and that taking action on something, even if it's in a really small way, still feels really good. So it really helps to motivate you and propel you forward. So, I'll say things like, while you're making a meal, when you pull open a drawer to get a utensil, just take a moment and look in the drawer. And if you notice one or two things that you don't really use or are broken or whatever, just take them out. And if you have sort of a box or a bag on hand that you kind of toss these things into, then you can routinely, as you move through your home and you move through your sort of daily routines, that you can be pulling things out a little bit at a time. And then naturally what happens is there's times where we have more energy or we feel more motivated that we'll like tackle more and get rid of more. And, maybe there's a weekend where you do more, but that overall that you're sort of continually chipping away at it. And then it becomes part of who you are, like that you're continuously sort of organizing and staying on top of things, that you're thinking about your stuff, and that you're just becoming more intentional about what's around you. So it also helps you to become more intentional about what comes into your home, because you're continually sort of like touching in with those things. So you think to yourself, oh, I don't actually want to bring more stuff in because I've been working hard every day to get rid of stuff.
So I love that. And as you were going through that, I was thinking about something I did this weekend that I think I actually do this and I didn't even realize I was doing it.
Yeah.
So I was in my car waiting on my son's baseball game to start because they had to go warm up and everything. And I
Yeah.
had this like, grocery store plastic bag in there. And I was like, okay, I didn't know I had that. And I was like, I think I can clean up my car and kind of get some
Totally.
stuff. It wasn't trash in my car. It was
Yeah.
just stuff that had been put in the
Mhm.
glove box or in the, the center console. So
Yeah.
I love that strategy. So
Yeah.
can you walk us through some other simple strategies like that to help us reduce that daily clutter?
Yeah. So, like what you were saying is a great one. Like sometimes when you have a few minutes that you just sort of grab a bag and fill it with stuff. But like there's certain areas that I think there's like specific strategies for. So with your closet and clothes, which often is a really overwhelming area for women, I think like clothing gets tied to so much about like our body image and how we feel about ourselves, and that can be like a big area of like overconsumption for people as well. And they don't want to get rid of stuff because it's like the size that used to fit or it will fit or whatever. So it's really a challenging area to tackle. So the one thing that I like to say is wear the things that are maybes for you. Like if you have something hanging in your closet or in your drawer and you sort of continually pass it over, I always challenge people to wear it. Like just take one day and pull out those pants that you keep passing over and then wear them, and then decide that day, like, oh, I wore these today and they were uncomfortable or I didn't feel good in them or whatever. And then you can just make one decision at a time. And I find that that's like a really helpful way, because when you're looking at a piece of clothing that's not on your body and you haven't worn it in a while, it's easy to say, oh, I can think about when I can wear that. But if you actually have an experience wearing it and you're like, oh, that was awful, or like, I didn't feel good, or it was digging into me, or I was pulling it up all day, then it's so much easier to decide and get rid of it like in the moment.
Oh,
So
that's a great tip because I'm like, I can relate to what you just said. I have a bunch of different like sizes in my closet, and I was
yeah,
like, oh, I need to lose like 20 pounds, and then I could probably fit into that. So
yeah,
that is really, that's
yeah.
a good tip. Any others?
Yeah. And then I think when it comes to like sentimental items, that's another really hard area for people. Like it's tied to a lot of emotions. A lot of those things feel irreplaceable, and they are. But we often just like hang on to them because of that, and we're not actually like using them in our lives or like interacting with them at all. So they just sort of take up space. And depending on, like, I've talked with women who, a parent died and then all of their stuff came to their house. So sometimes it's quite a lot of things. But that you can take the time to process through those things. Like I often encourage people to like go through things many times, and that each time you go through like a bin of sentimental items, for example, there'll be things that you realize you don't need and you can get rid of, and sometimes it just takes more time. but that also you can do things like take a photo of an item, because often it's just about the memory, and like looking at it, and a photo accomplishes that the same way that having the item does. But also if it's something really special, that you can do something with it, like you can display it in your home, or I've seen people do like really beautiful shadow boxes and have things hanging on their wall, or there's lots of ideas about like turning, textiles into a quilt or something that you actually use on a daily basis. So it's again, like so much of decluttering is about making decisions. And that's harder for some people than others. Like some of us are naturally more decisive, and then there's other people who like don't have the confidence yet to make those kind of decisions. So it's giving yourself an opportunity to go through those things a few times and make small decisions over and over. And it builds your confidence so that then as you go further along this road, it becomes easier for you to make quick decisions about things because you feel more confident.
And I love the tip you gave about taking a photo of that item. I had never thought of that before, or even like creating something with it, like a quilt
Yeah.
that you could use every day. So that's some great tips. Can you
Yeah.
talk about some daily routines, excuse me, that we can
Yeah.
kind of put in our day-to-day life to help us kind of reduce that overwhelm and get that clutter out of our life?
Yeah. So I think one thing that is important is about preventing things coming into your home as well while you're like tackling this stuff. So I always encourage people to wait 24 hours before you buy anything, and before you bring stuff into your home. So kind of give yourself like a little bit of space to think about it, because a lot of times stuff is tied to our emotions, and we know feelings and emotions change, and they change quickly. So just give yourself some time before you bring things into your home. Also, like as you're doing laundry, for example, that's a really great time to sort of like decide about clothes, and especially kids' clothes, oh, this is too small, this is ripped, or whatever. And just sort of like as you're already sorting laundry, you might as well, make decisions about stuff. I think that when it comes to like different rooms in your house, you can make little routines around it, like especially the kitchen and the bathroom, because we spend so much time in those spaces and we're using them routinely for preparing meals or getting ready or whatever, that, as you pull open a drawer or as you go into a cupboard, just make it part of your routine to like take a quick scan or notice if something's expired or broken, or that you just don't use, and make decisions about it. So it's really like the practice of just making decisions routinely in whatever way fits into your routine. So like laundry or whatever the things you are that you're doing on a daily basis, that to find a way to like make decisions about stuff while you're doing that. Kids' books, like when you go to read stories at night with your kids, just ask them. That's what I do with my daughter. I say, how do you feel about this book? We haven't read it in a while. And she either wants to read it again or she doesn't. And then we sort of pop it into the box. I just keep a box in my laundry room and I put things in there as we go. And then once it's full, then you just take it out. So, get it out of your sight. And there's one more actually really good one, is like a maybe box. If you're feeling unsure about something, to have a place where you put things that you're unsure about, and then you get a chance to live without them for a little while. And then you can come back to it and say like, oh, okay, that actually wasn't as important or as meaningful to me as I thought, or yeah, I do miss that. And so it's like the chance to feel the space.
I love that. And I think I've done some of that to some extent, like putting a bag in my closet and just filling it up when, I'm looking at something, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to wear this anymore. But I've never done the maybe box. And I think that would help me get a
Yeah.
lot more stuff out of the house. So I love that tip.
Yeah.
Sarah, before we wrap it up, do you have any
Mhm.
last minute tips for the audience here?
Yeah, I think that, like as women, clutter affects us. Like they've studied this, that clutter actually affects women more than it affects men. It impacts our stress levels. It impacts like how at peace we feel in our home. And I'm sure that lots of women can identify with that, like continual running list that we keep in our minds. And it just contributes to that, like the inability to relax or to take time for ourselves when we have sort of undone stuff around us. So I would say, so much of this is about changing the way you think about stuff. And I would just encourage women to think about every time that you keep something, or that you like have things in your home, that it is taking away from your peace, or it's something that you have to maintain, or it's something you have to take care of or deal with. Stuff isn't neutral. And so if you start to think about, as you declutter, whether or not this is worthwhile your peace or not, and is it adding to your life or not, and to sort of think about our stuff in a different way. Especially when we've been living in a cluttered environment for a long time, we can really think about it as something that's neutral and it's just there, but it does have an impact on us. So just shift your thinking a little bit about your stuff. And I think that really has the biggest impact.
And those are some great tips. And Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. And I want to let people know where they can find you. And I believe you have a free gift for them also. Can you let them know?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can go through the link, and there's an intentional living guide, and it really has an exercise for you to like craft your why. And I think that that's a really important exercise, although it's very simple. It's very impactful, so that you understand why you're doing things and why you're going through the effort of decluttering, or why you're exercising every day, or whatever it is that's like shifting towards a more intentional way of living. And when it's something that's really strong, it helps you maintain motivation to do these hard things. And then there are some of my favorite decluttering tips in there as well.
And we will put the links to Sarah's website, her Instagram account, and her podcast too, because Sarah has a podcast. So definitely check out her podcast and also her free gift in the show notes. And Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening today. Don't forget to sign up for the waitlist so you'll be the first to know when our next free Hobby School online learning summit launches. The link is in the show notes for this episode, or you can go to hobbyschool.com, and that's Hobby School with school without an H in it. Talk soon.